Assalamu alaikum students. I am Zamzama, your history teacher from Army Public School and College Zamzama. Welcome to all in the Abstract Online Support Program 2020. Okay, students, first of all, we need to find out the name of our textbook. Here you can see that the name of the textbook is clearly given, which is called as Window to World History. So this is our textbook, Window to World History for class 8. The pages which we are going to discuss today, they are from page number 62 till page number 66. The chapter number is 5 and the name of the lesson is British Rule and the Muslim of the Subcontinent. The resources required are textbook, internet connection, laptop and the notebook. So let's have an introduction or the summary of the lesson. In this lesson, what we are going to discuss first of all about the South Asia. We need to find out how the South Asia became an empire from a colony. Then we will discuss about the Queen Victoria's proclamation in 1858. British India administrative structure, Lord Macaulay's Menace on Education in 1835, Wood's Dispatch on Education in 1854. Okay students, let's find out the answers of some of the very simple questions. My first question is, what is subcontinent? It's a very simple question. What is subcontinent? Okay, hopefully you are very well aware with the answer of this question. So, the subcontinent is a large landmass that is a part of a continent but is considered either geographically or politically as an independent entity. So, we can take the example of the Indian subcontinent. So, the next question is, can we name the countries that lie in the subcontinent? Can we name the countries that lie in the subcontinent? Yes, we can name all the countries that lie in the subcontinent. So they are Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal and Bhutan. So let's move on to the next question. One of the very easiest questions. Who was the first European trader arrived in the subcontinent? Do you know the name of the first European trader arrived in the subcontinent? Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama was the first European trader arrived in the subcontinent. So the last question is, what was the reason for the European expedition? Means why the Europeans came to the India? What was the reason behind that? Do you know any specific reason? Yes, the Europeans actually wanted to establish the trade relations. So that's the reason they basically came to the South Asia and they came to the subcontinent. The objective for today's lesson are, at the end of the lesson, students will be able to, first of all, describe the transfer of the British power in India from the East India Company to the Crown and the salient feature of the Queen Victoria's proclamation. The second objective is outline the structure of the British administration in India and the early efforts to co-opt the Indians in the British settlement. The third and the last objective is outline the objectives and the result of the British education policy with special reference to Lord Macaulay's Menace and Wood's Dispatch. Our first topic is South Asia. How South Asia became an empire from a colony. The Portuguese, led by Vasco da Gama, were the first Europeans to land on the Indian west coast at Calicut in 1495. So we can say that Vasco da Gama was the first European sailor who went to India for the purpose of trade. Vasco da Gama led a fleet of 4 ships with a crew of 170 men from Lisbon. Here you can see the map of Europe and it's the map of the Indian subcontinent. This is Lisbon, the capital city of Portugal. So the Vasco da Gama started his journey from the Lisbon, and then finally the expedition made landfall on the African coast on the Cape of Good Hope. Here we are having the Cape of Good Hope. And then finally from the Cape of Good Hope he went to the Mozambique, and then from the Mozambique he went to Mombasa, and then from Mombasa he went to Malindi, and by using the monsoon wind finally he reached to the Calicut at the Malabar coast. When he reached to the Calicut, Vasco da Gama was really surprised and really amazed by looking at the spices. The land of India was rich in all different varieties of spices. So he wanted to buy the spices and start the trade with the Indians. For that purpose, the Vasco da Gama wanted the permission from the local ruler Zamzama to trade in the Malabar spices. Now, the important question here is that why Vasco da Gama adopted the sea route? Actually, at that time, there were two basic types of routes which mostly the traders adopted. One, the land route, and second, the sea route. This land route here, this is Europe. So either they need to reach to the India by the help of land, or they could reach to the India by water. So the problem here was that this land, this area was actually captured or ruled by the Arabs, the Muslim Arabs. At the time, the Caliphate was spreading in most of the parts of the world, and this Makkah, Medina, and most of the areas of Africa, they were under the control of the Muslim Arabs. So if the Europeans wanted to buy the spices from the India, they had to pay heavy taxes to the Arabs. So they decided to find out another route. So that's the reason they left the land route and they decided to search for the sea route. So Vasco da Gama was actually the person who discovered the sea route to reach to the Indian spices. Besides the Portuguese, there were some other European sailors, like you can see that here, the Dutch, the Danish and the French. They also came to India to trade in spices. So we can say that almost all the European countries, they wanted to buy the spices from the India, and they wanted to sell the Indian spices all over the world to earn the money. In 1600, the Queen of England gave the East India Company the charter to trade with the India and the Asia. So what was the East India Company? So the East India Company was actually the trading company that was set up by the British to start the trade relation with the India. So after this, the British set up the major trading posts in the three important cities of India. So the three important cities where the British set up the trading posts were Madras, Bombay and the Surat. So these were the three important cities, the Madras, Bombay and the Surat, where the British basically set up the trading posts. So besides the British, you can also find some other trading posts here, like you can see that the Portuguese, they set up their trading post at the Goa, and the French, they set up their trading post at the Pondicherry. With the passage of time, the power of the different European nations or the European traders declined. So in the result of that, the French and the British fought the three bitter wars, which were actually called as the Carnatic Wars. At the end of the three Carnatic Wars, the French actually left with the Pondicherry and the Chandigarh. So here it was the Pondicherry that was left with the French when they lost the war with the British. And these were called as the Carnatic Wars. And finally, the result was that the British became the trading nation of the India. So when the French and the British they were having the rivalry, the result was that the French and the British they involved themselves in trading the local people or the local soldiers or the sepoys in the European style. So with the passage of time, they formed their own armies. So these companies or the trading force they became so powerful that even they started supplying the army to the Nawabs or the Raja for the help of protection. So in return, they were getting the money and they were also getting their land. So this is how the English and the French people they were getting richer day by day. So by the 18th century, these companies started interfering in the political affairs of the small kingdom. So when the British trading companies started interfering in the political affairs of the small kingdom, the result was that the Indians revolted against the British in the War of 1857. So the result of the War of Independence was that the Indians they lost the War of Independence. So after the War of Independence, India finally came under the direct rule of the British Crown. And British adopted the policy of divide and rule. They actually wanted to divide the Muslims and the Hindus. Here, that's the picture of the East India Company. This is how the East India Company was set up in the India, and this is how the British they fortified their company, their trading force, and how they actually started capturing the land from the Indians. And this is the image from the War of Independence, in which the Indians lost. After the War of Independence, in which the Indians lost, on November 1st, 1958, a grand Darbar was held at Allahabad. So here the Lord Canning, here you can see that he was the Lord Canning at the Darbar, held forth the royal proclamation which announced that the Queen Victoria had assumed the government of the India, and she was the Queen Victoria, the Queen of England. So what was the important point? So the rule of the East India after the 1857 war, the rule of the East India Company finally came to an end, and the Queen Victoria assumed the title of the Empress of the India. And India now came under the direct rule of the British Parliament and the Queen of England. Some of the important provisions of the proclamation were that proclamation ensured that the policies of annexation of Indian territories were given up. And secondly, the Queen promised to give full religious freedom to the Indians and same rights to the natives of India and impartial protection of law, which were definitely later on not followed. After capturing the India and the Queen's proclamation, now India finally came under the direct control of the British. The British they basically set up their administrative structure. So they divided the India into 11 provinces and 560 princely states, and each princely state was having actually its own Raja, Maharaja, and Nawab. So this is actually the administrative structure that was followed by the British. So there were 11 provinces, and the provinces were further divided into divisions, and the divisions were divided into districts, and the districts were divided into tehsil, and tehsil were further divided into thana. So that was actually the whole administrative structure that was followed in the India, and this is how the British they were trying to run the India. Now these are the three tiers on which the basic administrative structure of India was based. So that was the civil service. Civil service means all the jobs that was provided by the government, and the army and police. British wanted to make some changes in the education system of India. For that purpose, Governor General Lord William Bentinck decided to alter the course of educating the Indians. Thomas Davington Macaulay was appointed as the President of the General Committee of Public Instruction. of the Lord Macaulay. He wrote a minute in 1935. According to the minute, what he said, Macaulay made an appeal for the provision of a Western-style education for the local people. He insisted that the School of India should adopt a Western curriculum, and he also wanted to develop a class of people who would adopt the English ideas and opinions without any resentment. And the result of that, the Christian missionaries adopted and enforced the Western curriculum to promote Christianity in the region. The funds allocated for education were mostly spent to enhance the Western style of education, and the traditional educational institutions of Muslims as well as Hindus were completely ignored. This is a picture of Sir Charles Wood, and Sir Charles Wood, who was a British social politician and a member of the Parliament. He became the president of the Board of Control of East India Company. In 1854, he sent the Wood Dispatch to the Governor-General Lord Dalhousie. The Sir Charles Wood Dispatch of 1854 led to the establishment of a Department of Public Instruction, under which the degree-awarding universities were set up in the presidencies of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta, and these universities were actually set up on the same pattern of the British universities. So that was all about the Sir Charles Wood Dispatch. Here is a picture of some of the universities which were actually set up on the pattern of the British universities, like the University of Bombay, the University of Calcutta, and the University of Madras. Now is the time to find out the consequences of the British education policy on the Indians, which were really very harsh. So let's find out each of them. Number one, the British schools received greater preference than the Pathshalas and the Madrasas. Pathshalas were actually the religious schools for the Hindus and Madrasas were the religious school for the Muslims. Actually, the grant which was given to the Pathshalas or either to the Madrasas, when the grants were stopped, the result was that the Pathshalas and the Madrasas, they were closed. The literacy rate of the Muslim population fell drastically, and the reason was that Muslims never ever wanted their children to get the Western education, and their madrasas were already closed, so they were not having any alternate way to send their children for education. The medium for instruction was changed from Persian to English, and English became the second language for the natives. Now students, it's a time to make a quick recap of the topics which we have learned. First of all, we need to find out what happened on 1495. Okay, on 1495, Vasco da Gama arrived in Calicut, India. What happened on 16th century? The British and Dutch started trading in India. What do you know about 1835? In 1835, Lord Macaulay's minute on education was discussed. Tell us something about 1854. What happened on 1854? On 1854, we discussed about the Wood Dispatch on education. And the very important date, that was 1857. What happened on 1857? On 1857, we discussed about the War of Independence. The first War of Independence is unfortunately the Indians lost. And finally, in 1858, when the Queen Victoria, she came to India and she made her proclamation. And finally, the India came under the control of the British Empire. It's the time for the written work. So students, in the written work, you need to do two questions. Question number one is, describe the British educational reforms introduced after the rule of the East India Company. Write a brief note on the administrative policies of British in India. In vocabulary, you need to prepare a bank of words you find difficult and new in the topic, and maintain a small notepad or booklet for new vocabulary from the page 62 till page 66. Map study, you need to go through the map that is given on page number 63 and locate the routes taken by the European in 1500 to reach India. In the research work, you need to search on internet to find more about the impact of War of Independence 1857 on Muslims of India and keep the report on notepad or in a booklet for assessment purpose. Thank you.